Guys. In this one, I'm just going to be going over this weekend of college basketball, and I'm going to be giving my predictions and picks and keys to the game because this is a huge weekend for college basketball. A lot of good games. So let's get to it. So first, we got Wisconsin at Purdue. This one's on Saturday at 1 o'clock, I believe. And Purdue's coming off a loss at Michigan, um, which has sent them to second in the Big Ten, I believe. But I think their record is still the same as Michigan. And then Wisconsin, I believe, is fourth in the Big Ten, but regardless, both of these teams are at the top tier of the Big Ten, so this should be a fun one. I think that it's at Purdue helps quite a lot because it's very difficult to win at Mackey, as a lot of teams have seen throughout the years. And although Wisconsin is good, I think they're going to have a really hard time slowing down Braden Smith, who's just an absolute surgeon with the ball. And I think Purdue's going to be able to get the crowd into it, build up a lead, build up a sizable enough lead to the point where Wisconsin really can't fight their way fully back. I think Purdue should win this one. Then we got Houston at Arizona, the two top teams in the Big 12. Um, or maybe Texas Tech is second. I think Arizona's tied with Tech, and then Houston is the first place team. But regardless, two top records in the Big 12 and two of the more underrated teams in the nation, I think. Arizona was probably the hottest team in the nation until they lost at Kansas State this earlier this week, but it seems like everybody's losing to Kansas State now. But they had won, I think it was six in a row. They beat Texas Tech. They were on fire, really, and not a lot of people were talking about them. And then Houston is kind of just like one of those silent killer teams. I feel like they don't really go noticed as much as they have in prior years, but they win games, and they have only lost one game in Big 12 play. That was to Texas Tech in overtime, or maybe it was, yeah, it was overtime. But Texas Tech is good, so I think Houston and Arizona are definitely the class of the Big 10 or Big 12. So this should be a really fun one. Again, I think the home court advantage is really going to help. The Arizona atmosphere in Tucson is like none other, and you know the fans are going to be bringing it to this game. And I think it's going to be a little bit difficult down the stretch for Houston because they don't necessarily have that like solid playmaker that you can always count on. They have a lot of glue guys that can make plays like LJ Cryer, Jawan Roberts, Emmanuel Sharp, but I don't know if they're gonna have that guy who can take the last shot in a hostile atmosphere, even though they have a bunch of experience. I think it might be just that last possession that makes a difference. And Arizona behind their home crowd, they're going to be inspired. This will be a really close one, but I got Arizona winning. Then we got Mississippi State and Ole Miss, two quiet SEC teams, and it's kind of I shouldn't even say quiet, but when the SEC is this good and this top heavy, you kind of start to forget about these teams like Mississippi State and Ole Miss that are still really good. They're both ranked in one of the toughest SEC conferences we've seen of all time. And this is a rivalry game, of course, the in-state rivalry. And I think this will be a fun one, a very underrated watch. But I do think that Ole Miss is going to win. I really like what Chris Beard is building down in Oxford, and I'm going to go with the Rebels in this one. Then we got a ranked unranked matchup. I felt like I should include this one just because I could see it being a close game. In the SEC, you really never know. Road games are just never easy to come by. And Texas is solid. I know they're kind of squarely on the bubble right now, according to Joe Lunardi. Kentucky coming off the series sweep of Tennessee, where they beat them at home in somewhat dominant fashion. I know Tennessee brought it back at one point, but it felt like Kentucky was in control for pretty much that entire game. So Kentucky is playing really really well right now, and I think they're starting to peak at the right time, which is good as we head into mid-February in the latter stretch of the season, heading into conference tournaments. So I think Texas will be inspired. Again, they're playing behind their home crowd. They'll be inspired, but I think Kentucky is just too solid right now, and with Lamont and Butler back in the lineup, they just look like a totally different team and so much more complete. I think it's going to be tough for a lot of teams, um, especially Texas, to take down this Kentucky team. So I'm going with Kentucky on the road. Then we got another ranked unranked matchup. It's Michigan State at Illinois. This one's on at 8 o'clock, I believe. And Michigan State has started to falter a little bit. They got swept by the California schools. Then they beat don't I don't remember who they beat, but it was I can't. Oh man, I can't remember. They beat someone on Saturday, and Jace Richardson had an incredible game. The stud of a freshman. I think he dropped 28, and then they hosted Indiana, and they lost to Indiana, which was really just a crushing blow because Indiana is a team that's just in turmoil. Their coach is leaving at the end of the season. They've severely underperformed. So while they've had the talent to beat the top teams, you never really want to be that team that slips up to a game to another team that you should not lose to. But unfortunately, that happened to Michigan State. But I think this will be more of a bounce back game for them against an Illinois team that's been largely inconsistent throughout the majority of the season. They got playmakers. They got Kasparis Yakuchonis. He's a great player. Um, and it's going to be a fun one, the nighttime matchup in front of the Orange Crush. But I think this is going to be a bounce back game for Michigan State. They have it within them to win these tough, gritty games. And I think it's going to be um, a really essential game for them because looking down their schedule, they got Purdue at home, and then they travel to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan. So I think they're going to be playing really with a sense of urgency here, and I think it's gonna come through in the end for them. And I got the Spartans taking this one. Then we got the Sunday game, Creighton at St. John's. Um, Creighton coming off a loss to UConn after they had previously won 12 straight, and they might have been actually the hottest team in the nation. But St. John's, I think, was hotter. They had beaten just about everybody in the Big East, and then they went to Villanova on Wednesday, I believe. Yeah, they went to Villanova on Wednesday, lost in a very tight matchup to the Wildcats, to kind of stumble or to kind of bring them back down to earth a little bit. But they're still the class of the Big East. These two teams will both definitely be contending for a tournament title in the Big East, of course. And I think this is going to be a get back game for St. John's. They got the playmakers. Creighton just hasn't. I know they've really started to click, but they don't have a Trey Alexander and they don't have a Baylor Shireman. And Pop Isaac's going out early in the season, I think, is really hurting them and really restricting them from where they could be. They got the experience with Ashworth and Kalkbrenner, but I think this is definitely one that St. John's is just going to come away with. So I'm going with St. John's. And then finally, we got the matchup of the year, number one versus number two, the Iron Bowl. This one's in Tuscaloosa. It's set up to be, like I said, the game of the year. A lot of storylines for both teams. You got potential player of the year, Janai Broome, taking on the loaded Bama team that honestly has kind of gone underrated. I feel like a lot of the talk has been about Duke and Auburn because they have that star power. But Alabama is right there. They made the Final Four last year. They brought back Mark Sears and Grant Nelson, among many others. They're just a very solid team, and it's going to be a rocking atmosphere in Tuscaloosa. So it's going to be really hard for Auburn. Um, so this one, I feel like you could really go either way, but I just think that Auburn has been too solid this year, and I think they might get shocked out a little bit out of the gate. It's going to be a rowdy atmosphere, but they got playmakers on playmakers on playmakers, and I think I just trust Auburn and Janai Broome and Bruce Pearl, probably Coach of the Year, to put it together and really gut out a win right here. So I am going to go with Auburn winning on the road against their arch rival in the game of the year. All right, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think about my picks. Comment down below if you agree, disagree. Feel free to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.